की जय, पवन पुत्र हनुमान की जय।
Radhaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine Srimati Bhakti Swami Iti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharini Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashtadis Tarinimi Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda
Jai Vishnupada Paramahamsa Radhikacharya Shri Srimati Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Manor Prabhupada Ki Jai Anand Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai Acharya Shri Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Lord Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhakti Ki Jai Radha Krishna Gopal Shyama Kund Radha Kund Giri Govardhana Ki Jai Krishna Rama Ki Jai Gopal Vrindavan Ki Jai Jagannath Puri Rama Ki Jai Ganga Mai Ki Jai Yamuna Mai Ki Jai Tulsi Devi Ki Jai Devi Ki Jai Samaveta Vishwavrinda Ki Jai Gaur Pramana Oh glory to the assembly Oh glory to the assembly Oh glory to the assembly Oh glory to the
Namaste Narasimhaya Keshavadrita Narahari Rupa Jayo Jagadisha Hare Jayo Jagadisha Hare Jayo Jagadisha Hare Rupa Jayo Nasingade Jayo Nasingade Jayo Nasingade Jayo Nasingade Jayo Prahlad Maharaj Jayo Prahlad Maharaj Prahlad Maharaj, Jayo Prahlad Maharaj. Shri Prahlad Narasimha Bhagwan ki Jai.
No, Tees is 30 in Hindi. This is 30. It should be in there.
Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivanadari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivanadari Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivanadari Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jaya Radha Gokula Nanda Radha Gokula Nanda Shri Radhe Jaya Sita Ram Lakshman Hanuman Jaya Sita Ram Lakshman Hanuman Jaya Goranitai Jaya Goranitai Jaya Jaya Prabhupada Jaya Srila Prabhupada Tagore from Ananda. Om Jnanatimandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshurumilatam Yena Tasme Shri Guruve Namaha. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pashtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Iti Namine. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschacha Deshatarine. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, everyone. So first of all, it's been a while since I've given a Bhagavad Gita session, and in no way do I feel qualified to be speaking from the Bhagavad Gita. I'm still learning, but somehow through sharing, I can also come to realize the greatness and the beauty of the Bhagavad Gita, and hopefully even apply it in my life more and more, bit by bit. So yeah, being here, sitting here, sharing really is also for my purification. So therefore I request the blessings of all the devotees that are watching online and the devotees that are present in the temple, so that I can speak of something useful, something beneficial, something practical, and that we can all leave uplifted and inspired. So today we'll be reading from Chapter 3, verse 3, which is Karma Yoga. So I'll start from the Sanskrit and then we'll move on to the transliteration and the translation. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Lokesmin Vivida Nishta Pura Prokta Mayan Naga Jnana Yogena Sankyanam Kama Yogena Yoginam. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Lokesmin Dvivida Nishta Pura Prokta Mayan Naga Jnana Yogena Sankyanam Kama Yogena Yoginam. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Lokesmin Dvivida Nishta Pura Prokta Maya Naga Jnana Yogena Sankyanam Kama Yogena Yoginam. So transliteration. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha, the Supreme Personality of Godhead said, Loke, in the world, Asmin, this, Dvivida, two kind of, Nishta, faith, Pura, formerly, Prokta, was said, Maya, by me, Anaga, O sinless one, Jnana Yogena, by the linking process of knowledge, Sankyanam, of the empiric philosophers, Karma Yogena, by the linking process of devotion, Yoginam, of the devotees. So, translation by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, O sinless Arjuna, I have already explained that there are two classes of men who try to realize the self. Some are inclined to understand it by empirical, philosophical speculation, and others by devotional service. Purport. In this second chapter, verse 39, the Lord explained two kinds of procedures, namely Sankhya Yoga and Karma Yoga, or Buddhi Yoga. In this verse, the Lord explains the same more clearly. Sankhya Yoga, or the analytical study of the nature of spirit and matter, is the subject matter for persons who are inclined to speculate and understand things by experimental knowledge and philosophy. The other class of men work in Krishna consciousness, as it is explained in the 61st verse of the second chapter. The Lord has explained also in the 39th verse that by working by the principles of Buddhi Yoga or Krishna consciousness, one can be relieved from the bonds of action, and furthermore there is no flaw in the process. The same principle is more clearly explained in the 61st verse, that this Buddha yoga is to depend entirely on the supreme, or more specifically on Krishna, and in this way all the senses can be brought under control very easily. Therefore, both the yogas are interdependent, as religion and philosophy. Religion without philosophy is sentiment or sometimes fanaticism, while philosophy without religion is mental speculation. The ultimate goal is Krishna. Without religion, Krishna. Because the philosophers who are also sincerely searching after the absolute truth come in the end to Krishna consciousness. This is also stated in the Bhagavad Gita. The whole process is to understand the real position of the self in relation to the super self. The indirect process is philosophical speculation, by which gradually one may come to the point of Krishna consciousness. And the other process is directly connecting everything with Krishna in Krishna consciousness. Of these two, the path of Krishna consciousness is better because it does not depend on purifying the senses by the philosophical process. Krishna consciousness is itself the purifying process, and by the direct method of devotional service, it is simultaneously easy and sublime. Hare Krishna again. So yeah, as I've mentioned, when I read this verse, as inspired as I was by the verse, I'm in no position do I feel qualified to really share anything, but nevertheless, I've done some research, and so really and truly I'm just relaying what I've learnt, what I've understood, what I've read, what I've taken notes of. And perhaps in between this discussion, some points will arise, some thoughts will arise, and yeah, just a wonderful opportunity for those that are watching online also just to share it on the comment section. And for anyone in the temple, we can have a discussion. So what I really want to kind of discuss, or what I thought would be a very good point of discussion in particular to this verse, is that can Buddha Yoga refer to all three yogas, Karma and Jnana and Bhakti Yoga? So, Buddha Yoga basically means intelligence that's used for the purpose of yoga, or purpose of actually attaining Krishna. And so therefore, yes, Buddha Yoga can be used for the three processes of Karma, Jnana and Bhakti. And one thing that kind of really arose for me was how oftentimes I read in the Bhagavad Gita that spirituality, real intelligence means understanding that spirituality also it comes with individuality. That there will be people through activities using their intelligence, and through Karma Yoga they'll be able to attain Krishna. And then there's people through Jnana Yoga, and then there's individuals through Bhakti Yoga. But the thing is that, like for instance, if one meditates that he is not the body, and that he shouldn't be attached to the fruits of his work and the bodily gratification, then he's actually using his intelligence to come to the supreme truth. So this is what it is that there's mind, and beyond mind there's intelligence, and beyond intelligence there's the soul. Another person may actually use intelligence to connect with the spiritual reality. Like in many different religions, we see that people through Jnana Yoga, through intelligence trying to connect with the Supreme Lord, even though they don't know what the spiritual sky looks like or what Krishna is or looks like, they're still using their intelligence to try and connect with the Supreme Truth. And yes, it is a process that takes longer, but ultimately also they can use Buddha Yoga to come closer to Krishna also. I had my own personal experience of that through reading different scriptures, through trying to use my intelligence, Of course, ultimately it comes through the mercy of the Lord, but by trying to use my intelligence, by reading through different scriptures, ultimately I was able to, through the mercy of the Lord, able to understand Krishna, come closer to Krishna. So it is a possible, but one thing that I've noticed from my own personal experience is that it is a journey that takes longer, and it is a journey full of thorns. So there's many ways that we can be distracted and we can be deviated, because in modern day world there's so many information, there's so many knowledge, and so practically it becomes near impossible to really kind of go through all that to come to that realization that Krishna is the Supreme Lord. Of course, again, like if it's Krishna's will, then it'll happen, but it's difficult. And that's why ultimately Krishna actually is most pleased with Bhakti Yoga, using our intelligence to serve him, to please him, to serve his devotees. So yes, in one sense, Buddhi Yoga can mean all three things, karma, jnana and bhakti. But through the whole Vedic hymns, through Krishna's own words, he emphasizes the importance of actually practicing Bhakti Yoga, using our intelligence to surrender to him, using our intelligence to serve him, which is actually the quickest route, the easiest route. And that's why actually in the Bhagavad Gita, Jnana Yoga is not really discussed. Because really in the Bhagavad Gita the scene is played out as Arjuna being in the battlefield, and so therefore Krishna is encouraging Arjuna, in one sense also encouraging us, that we should perform karma yoga but for Krishna's pleasure, that we should engage in our duties, in our occupation, but only for the service of the Lord, only to please and serve the Lord. And that is real renunciation in one sense, that many people when they come into spiritual life, into spiritual practice, they have this misconception thinking that it means completely renouncing everything. But actually in one sense, Bhakti Yoga, in one sense, real renunciation, real sannyas means utilizing whatever it is in our life for the service of the Lord, for the pleasure of the Lord. That is the greatest activity. And so therefore Krishna uses Buddhi Yoga also to explain to Arjuna, in one sense, how there's a difference between the body and the soul. And so that therefore when you actually act in knowledge, you can free yourself from bondage. So the next thing I wanted to kind of move on covering that is this misconception that people think that spiritual life, as I mentioned earlier, means to retire from active life. They think that cultivation just simply comes through sitting around and through just chanting. But by nature, the soul is always active. Actually, Prabhupada was mentioning today, I was listening to one lecture, that the body is dead, but the soul is always active. The soul is always, it's not a dead matter, it's an active. So therefore what it is that even though the body is just a dead matter and the soul is active, we still need to engage ourselves in the service of the Lord. We need to find, because if we're not engaged ourselves in the devotional service of the Lord, then naturally we fall prey to Maya, we fall prey to negative habits, we fall prey to negative qualities. So it's really important. This is what Krishna is trying to inform Arjuna, how he can remain in his position and still practice Krishna consciousness, how he can still practice Buddhi Yoga, using his intelligence for the service of the Lord. And in one sense also Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, when he came, he also asked everybody, he informed everyone the same thing, that it's not really about changing your position, but it's about associating with the devotees, hearing from the devotees, chanting the holy name. And through all these activities, what it is that the head space is there, but we can also come into our heart space, which is ultimately where Bhakti Yoga really lies in. Bhakti Yoga is not a process of just a head space. Actually, heart space is also required. And when we can come into our heart space, then what that means is that we're able to perform and execute our services with love and faith. It's not so much necessarily about the activity, but it is the emotion, the feeling behind the activity. Serving Krishna with love, serving devotees with love, chanting with faith. And so therefore, there's no scarcity in Krishna consciousness. There's no fear of that I need to give up anything. Really, is that in one sense everything belongs to Krishna, but really it's about using everything that we have for Krishna's service, engaging in Krishna's activities. And the most important thing I really want to raise in this, that, and when I came to the manor, when I came into the Brahmacharya ashram, I genuinely also felt this way, that I came here for the sole purpose of just trying to get away from activities, trying to get away from all the noises, all the distractions in the world. Let me just chant and let me just be happy. But the error with that, the mistake with that, is that then people come to believe that externally they're making rapid progress, but internally they're still in the same place. And so therefore what happens is such people, when they come into interaction with the world, because ultimately Krishna consciousness is a preaching movement. So in one sense or another, we will find ourselves talking with people, we will find ourselves, like even what I'm doing right now, preaching, sharing Krishna consciousness. But what we find with such people is because internally they have not made the same level of progress as what seems externally, they easily fall away, they easily fall prey to Maya. So really and truly, it's not so much about pretending to be perfect or pretending that we have the answers or pretending that we've advanced. It's really about attaining that ultimate perfection. And we attain that ultimate perfection not through seclusion, but rather through engagement. Remembering that the ultimate goal is really to attain Krishna, and the process is what can help us to do that. The process is what can help us to become more detached. The process is what can help us to become more sober. The process is what can help us to advance if we take it serious, if we commit ourselves with faith. And then the next part, and actually when we look at it, this misconception of thinking that we don't have to work, that in spiritual life it's all about just chanting away and reading away. But when we actually even look through our history of many saintly personalities, we realize that many of them, like Prabhupada was basically mentioned in Jesus Christ, he also had to work whilst he was preaching. And that's just one individual, that's one personality out of many other personality. So really and truly what it is that Prabhupada was encouraging and emphasizing the importance of not really trying to run away from the world. And this is one thing that I was kind of sharing with one devotee, that Krishna consciousness or spiritual tools is not meant to be utilized to try and escape from reality. It's actually the other way around. We utilize the tools to actually deal with our anathas, to deal with our obstacles, to deal with our challenges, so that therefore those doesn't become impediment as we progress further and further down the lane of spiritual life. So we utilize those tools really to protect our devotional life, not to try and run away. Because every obstacles, every challenges and every difficulties, we can actually utilize it for Krishna's service. To see the nature of this material world, to see the suffering of this world. And this is what it means to use our knowledge, to use our intelligence, to see the reality for what it is and choose Krishna instead. And Arjuna at one point emphasized that, spiritual life is great, like Krishna consciousness is good, so why are you engaging me to fight? Why are you telling me to fight? And so the most important thing to realize here is that the nature of the mind is that it rejects and it accepts. So it has to do one or the other. So therefore, if we're saying that we don't want to be engaged in our duties, then in one way we'll experience frustration, we'll experience unease. And with that frustration and unease, it'll be more difficult actually to see what lies ahead, spiritually speaking, in terms of Krishna consciousness. And so therefore better to accept whatever our constitutional position is, better to accept what our duty is, but try and dovetail it. And Prabhupada really emphasized that. Prabhupada emphasized the importance of dovetailing, not rejecting, but dovetailing all of our activities, everything for Krishna consciousness. And so in particular, Karma Yoga, I wanted to speak a little bit about. Basically, Karma Yoga means fruitive action. And we know in one sense, when we look at the world, everyone is working for some result. And actually in Srimad Bhagavatam, I believe it was mentioned in how people are working so tirelessly like asses. And what it is that even though they're working so hard and they're acquiring so many results, they don't even get to enjoy that result. They can't even sleep peacefully at night. And you see that. As the standard of living increases, so does people's frustration, people's anxiety, people's depression, people's unease. And so people want more and more and more. And that's what karma is. In one sense, people want to work hard, tirelessly, day and night, for a little bit of sense of enjoyment, a little bit of sense of gratification. But now what Karma Yoga means is that we, whatever activities, whatever occupation that we have, we engage ourselves in those activities, but we're not so attached to the result of our activities. Rather, we engage ourselves in those activities for the satisfaction of Krishna. And so when we're working for the satisfaction of Krishna, then where's the frustration? Then what it is that we become reliant on Krishna. We become reliant on whatever it is that Krishna has planned for us. So therefore, what it is that there's this very beautiful verse. I need to find the quote, the chapter and the verse, which says that detachment is that we are not attached to anything, but detachment rather is that nothing is attached to us. So therefore we are performing our duties, we are performing our occupations, we are looking after the kids, we are going to work. But if today we were to be told, okay, leave all that and there's something else for you, let's say if our spiritual master told us that, then we wouldn't be so attached to it, we wouldn't be so obsessed with it. Because ultimately what it is that we're trying to satisfy Krishna. So whether this satisfies Krishna or that satisfies Krishna, we're happy to surrender. We're happy to hear, we're happy to listen. And one thing that I kind of wanted to mention that just kind of came to mind is that through these processes, it's really important that we introspect. I was just sharing it with another devotee that hearing and trying to understand Krishna consciousness is just one part of the process. Because further than that really is about introspecting. How often do we journal? How often do we read Shastra and do we discuss? Do we have a discussion? Do we ask questions? And Krishna emphasizes a lot in the Bhagavad Gita the importance of surrendering, the importance of being submissive, hearing and inquiring. So inquiring is really an important element for our introspection. Because then when we can inquire, when we can introspect, then what it is that the process becomes more applicable. One struggle that many people find in spiritual life is that there is many discussions to be had. But oftentimes we find that there's not an awful lot of application. Because what it is that in our journey, in our midst of so much discussion, sometimes we find that we're complicating things. And Bhakti Yoga is a very simple process. To chant, to read, and to be engaged in service. So through hearing, through introspecting, and through applying, then the last most important thing really is also the power of prayer. Really and truly, sincerely praying to Krishna, because as much as Krishna consciousness is a science of self-realization, that science can only come down through the mercy of the Lord and the mercy of the Parampara. So that we can do whatever we can from our side. But ultimately, really, we need mercy to be able to understand this, to be able to practice it with purity, with sincerity, and earnestly. And the most important thing is actually really to understand it. I've spoken to so many people preaching in the past. And one of the things that I always find is that sometimes people take some passage from the Bhagavad Gita, and what they do is they take it out of context and then they ask me, oh, but what does this mean? It doesn't sound right. So one of the most important things, the reason why through all of these different yogas is so important to have a spiritual master, to have a spiritual teacher, to have a mentor, someone that we can inquire from, is because in the beginning we don't see Shastra as it is, we see Shastra as we are. And we have come with so much complexity, so much conditioning, so much anarthas. So therefore it's natural that when we're reading these scriptures, that actually we misunderstand it. Because we even misunderstand ourselves. We don't really know ourselves. And that's what the role of a spiritual master in one sense is also there for. So that when we read the scriptures, when we study Shastra, we can inquire from them. We can ask questions. And as we ask more questions, the quality of our questioning improves. And so then the quality of our practice improves. And so one of the most important things, and I really want to just emphasize and stress this, is that ultimately in this yuga, in Kali Yuga, really the process is Bhakti Yoga. It's through chanting, through surrendering, and through serving. We don't have a very long lifespan in one sense. We have a very short time. Our life in this world is very limited. And Prabhupada was also emphasizing this, that things are unpredictable. So therefore, first-class intelligence really is that we take the quick method for self-realization, which is Krishna consciousness, which is through devotional service. And through Bhakti Yoga, through the process of chanting and hearing from the Parampara, through devotional service, where we get poured even with more realized wisdom, what it is that we can also avoid many people nowadays that we have in the world which are speculators and just speakers that are speaking flowery language from the Vedas or from different scriptures. It's so important. I never really realized what it means, the importance of hearing from the right people. Not just hearing like anything from anyone, but hearing from the right source of people, bona fide gurus, people that are devotees of Krishna, people that are in line with the Parampara. Because what it is that if we practically hear from anyone, and I've experienced this myself or everyone, not only is it that that word is going, entering into our ears, entering into our consciousness, but actually it's also their consciousness entering into ours. That's quite interesting, that how it's not just words that are being spoken, but it's also consciousness. And so therefore, the people that we listen to, the sort of consciousness we absorb from them, that in one sense also shapes our experience in spiritual life, in Krishna consciousness, our practices, our relationships with other devotees, our progression. And so therefore Prabhupada emphasized the importance of sticking with his book, sticking to the process of Bhakti Yoga, sticking to the process of devotional service. And through this method, then we can gain access to Krishna's wisdom as it is, not as others have interpreted, not as others have understood. Because man's knowledge is very limited. one thing I wanted to add earlier on is that, yes, in one sense, all of us are forced to act in this material world helplessly, according to the impulse of the modes of material nature. And oftentimes we find people in the world that they commit certain grave acts, and they don't even realize why they have done that. When you ask them, it's like something just kind of overtook them. And so this is the importance, really and truly, of taking shelter of Krishna consciousness, taking shelter of the practice of Buddha Yoga. Because through that, then we can discover what real silence is. Meaning that we engage in activities of Krishna consciousness, and so therefore Maya becomes silent. So with that being said, this is why it's important, even though there are many types of yoga, ultimately Bhakti Yoga is the process that we should endeavor to be on and to take. Serving Krishna, serving his devotees, hearing, chanting, and remaining true to the parampara. And through that way, we can get more and more realized wisdom, and we can come closer to Krishna. We can come closer to our true purpose of existence. Thank you all so much. Hare Krishna. Nita. Nita Gaura Pramanande. Srila Prabhupada ki.